Chad, Calvin Ridley is back. He's been reinstated back into the NFL after gambling on NFL games after a 1-year suspension. And today the NFL made it official. They could have done this last month if they would have chosen to do it on the day he was eligible to apply to be reinstated, which he did. But he's a former first-round pick of Atlanta. They traded him, of course, to Jacksonville. And now he's another weapon that will be on the field for Trevor Lawrence in 2023. The right move, and the suspension was way too long for the $1,500 roughly that was wagered. And here's the thing. It's not because of the fact that he wagered or participated in gambling for the NFL on NFL games. It's just period, point blank. You can't do it on anything if you're a paid employee of the league in some way.
Was he betting against his team? Did we ever find out? Were there prop bets? I think there was some prop bet stuff, right?
I think the props all had to do with if he did it with the Falcons, it benefited the Falcons. Guys. And he was out for the games that he was wagering on. And the others was like a parlay, I believe, with other games.
It's one of those stories that just makes me think, just why is that with it? Because here's what I mean.
Yeah. There's
this long-standing thing that if you do anything that's remotely involved with gambling on sports and you're in the sport, well, that's a no-no, and you're done at that point. Doesn't matter if you bet against your team, for your team, whatever. If you're actively involved in a pro sport and you gamble in any way, that's going to be really bad news. I understand the idea behind that, and you don't want the look of any impropriety, but there has to be some nuance here. You're not on the team. You're not outwardly betting against your own team, so you're not affecting the outcome of the game. Let's start there. Not playing, you're not negatively affecting the outcome of the game. You're not shaving points. You're not intentionally trying to lose. The amount of money wagered is pretty low considering what money is wagered in America at $1,500 for a guy with his salary as well. You got to put all those factors in, Hutton, and say, maybe a year is too much. Maybe a less suspension than that. Let's really look at it. Let's weigh this against, I don't know, some domestic violence things that have happened in the league, some gun charges, all these other awful things that go on. Let's look and see what's really fair and not just throw a blanket over anything involving sports wagering and say, oh, no, that's the unforgivable sin. That's a no-no. You're out for a year for doing that, especially when you partner with sports books now.
So what he did, there bets were made online with Hard Rock Sportsbook while he was away from the team due to injury. He had 3 multi-leg parlays, and some of those bets included at least one NFL game. I think it was the Dolphins and someone maybe. At least one NFL game has been reported. And then he had a 3-team, a 5-team, and an 8-team parlay. He put $500 on each of those parlays. And his name was on his account. The sportsbook turned him in. Did the investigation for the league. And that's how he got caught.
When I first saw the sports book that he was wagering with, my thought was, well, he got a year because he didn't wager with the official partner of the NFL. That's a bigger sin to the NFL than anything. Oh, you didn't go with, what is it, Is it DraftKings or FanDuel?
Yeah, or Caesars, which is on the Superdome now in New Orleans.
Oh, you didn't go with one of our 3 official partners? That's a season. If you would have gone with one of the 3, Roger Goodell said it would have been half a year. But because you went with an outside sports book, that's an even more unforgivable sin. You always partner with our league partners. It's just ridiculous. It doesn't – I understand why you want to keep that out of your sport with guys actively playing because you want to uphold the integrity of your competition. But let's actually take some – a microscope to each story and say, all right, what's really fair in this situation? You can't apply nuance to this and not throw a blanket over it. The NFL failed in this instance.
Novak Djokovic has officially withdrawn from Indian Wells and their Open that's being hosted this week. The draw happens today. Tournament officials made it official yesterday where he waited until the very last minute. But it's clear that his application for entry into the country as an unvaccinated athlete for COVID-19 was looked over. They're not giving him any special treatment to come and play inside the United States. He's unvaxxed. We know that. We know his stance on it. And here's the thing. The May 11th, I believe, is the date where everything's going to be lifted as far as travel is concerned. And he was asking for leniency on getting into the states in order to play here, and it was again denied. You had Senator Rick Scott from Florida on over the weekend tweeted that they tried to help out the waiver request for Djokovic to no avail. Marco Rubio wrote a letter to President Biden on this to no avail. And again, the emergency declaration from the United States for COVID-19 in terms of traveling into the country ends on May 11th, where foreigners will be able to travel inside the country for whatever reason. That ban will be lifted for unvaccinated.
We're really hanging on to this thing, right? We have got our I feel like Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday. We're hanging on by our fingernails right now, trying to get any last inch of vax talk that we can in this country and make sure that people are held accountable for not getting vaccinated. We are just hanging on for dear life. May 11th? Is that when this ends?
May 11th. Well, that's what they say.
I mean, it's remarkable to me that this is still a thing.
Well, it's actually ended.
That's the craziest thing to me is that I just feel like everyone just kind of said, it's like the unspoken deal. Like, just come on in. It's fine. I don't really care anymore. No one really cares. I'll act like I care on social media about it, but I don't really care. So come on, if you're on, it doesn't really matter. And here you have where you've got this global sports superstar in Novak Djokovic that cannot get into the U.S.
22-time Grand Slam champion.
To compete in huge tennis tournaments.
In 2023.
That would help the business of all of these local areas because Novak Djokovic is there. And hey, guys, there's going to be no appeal process here. We got the rules until May 11th. These are the rules. There's no flexibility here. He will either get vaccinated right now or he will not participate in the United States. It's just I don't care what side you're on vaccinations. You have to take a look at this and laugh that we are still talking about this these many months later with a lot of new information out there and everything else that we know. And here we are still talking about Novak Djokovic can't get into the United States.
If Pfizer's facing lawsuits, but Djokovic can't travel from Dubai to here because he's trying to play in back-to-back tournaments.
Woody Harrelson's making jokes on SNL. I mean, Lorne Michaels is allowing
Woody
Harrelson, Lorne Michaels in the SNL cast, who are as far left, progressive, whatever you want to call them, as anyone else, are now sitting back and making some jokes.
They're now to the point where they're laughing at it.
About all this. They're joining in on the joke, too. Woody Harrelson is talking about Pfizer being a drug cartel. And that there should be a script to a movie about all the cartels getting together and deciding they're going to sell all these drugs. And if you don't take them, you can't do anything. And it's so unbelievable that no one would buy the script. Yet Novak Djokovic cannot get into the United States. It's
to play tennis.
This is comedy to me. Like this is like the movie Idiocracy by Mike Judge. This is just pure comedy. I've read this headline. I'm thinking, what? How? Oh, wait, there's actually, he can't even get into the country because of our laws?
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah, no one can unless you
come on. I'm not
status.
Trying to make light of, anyone who's sick or was sick or anything else, but where we are now with this, this is pure comedy. This is funny to me that this is still a story.
Chad, I thought it was a joke when I saw the headline that Adam Silver, the commissioner of the National Basketball Association, is in line. He's on a short list of those in line to take over for Bob Iger at Disney as CEO whenever Iger steps away and retires in 2 years. I could have listed I don't know how many names in sports. I would not have mentioned Adam Silver if you said it's going to be a sports figure. Who will it be? And Adam Silver is on a short list to take over for Disney. The background for him is sports. It's not into movies and film and the areas that Disney funds everything else with. I'm intrigued to learn more on this, but at the same time, I think surely this was a joke headline, and it's not. It's right in line with apparently what Disney wants.
I think Adam Silver's a really smart guy. Every time I've heard him interviewed, I think he's a very intelligent guy. I think he's probably a good manager in a lot of areas and understands business and media and all those things. And there's some things that he does really well. He's also been a big part in what is, to me, a diminishing return from the NBA. And
no doubt.
The financials show that also, by the way. So it's not just me, in my opinion, saying that. So it's crazy that he could fail upwards here,
Yeah,
going
false-
from
yeah.
what is a much bigger job than the NBA commissioner is being the head of Disney, which basically controls media at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So we just got done talking about last week the Murdoch story down in South Carolina and how this really unveiled this interconnected good old boy network in South Carolina of guys, scratching each other's back to get favors done, everything else, things that we know
Cut
about
the cord,
in America
yeah.
and all this. To me, this is like the major media New York City version of the good old boy club. Like Adam Silver probably just had some really good friends in really high places.
He's one of 3 finalists, though.
That's why this is getting out there, and that's also why he is one of 3 finalists. Like, okay, are you really progressive? Are you going to come in and change the races of all the old Disney stories and put them back on there? If you check all these boxes, then we will consider you for the next CEO of Disney. And that's what Adam Silver checks.
I mean, it's the biggest
So now
media
he's
company
there.
in the world.
Yeah.
We mentioned them last week. 180 billion is what they're worth on the market.
I don't want to say that Adam Silver's Alec Murdoch, but do you think Alec Murdoch is you think that you look at him and you're like, oh, this is a guy who should run a major law firm in an area? Like, he seems competent enough.
The one area where it's like, oh, that makes sense is the long-running relationship that the NBA and
Yeah, look,
Disney/ESPN has with Iger.
Yeah,
But
in Hampton, South Carolina, the boxes you have to check are: do you go hunting with this guy? Check. Did you go to this public school in the SEC? Check. Are your kids friends with each other? Check.
do you know buckshot and birdshot?
Right. Do you understand? Do you have a beach house on some island in the Atlantic? Check. I mean, this is a different set of boxes that Silver checks. Progressive, check. Donates to all the right political causes, check.
Yeah.
Has been very progressive in the handling of a major league, check. They're just going down the list. Knows everyone at Disney and on the board really well, check. It's a more sophisticated version of the good old boy system is what we're watching here.
And you think it's more of like a, hey, thanks for being our friend. You're a finalist.
Yeah,
Well, you're not the guy.
Look, I think that there people legitimately believe he'll do a good job also that are involved in this, but I think a lot of people on the board or whatever they have making these decisions, they know Silver, they're comfortable with him, they like him, and that's why he's a finalist.
Chad,
I don't think there's a lot of sports fans that are making this decision. The
No.
sports fans would look at it and say, wait a minute, this guy has not been that great for a beloved sports league. Why would he run Disney? I think it's people that don't know sports that are going to make this decision.
Chad, I'm surprised we're already seeing Chris Beard's name in the same season linked with other teams after he was fired from Texas and knowing the details, no charges brought forward, but knowing the details as to why Texas let him go, fired him with cause earlier this season, given the circumstances of the situation. And now, Mark Adams, head coach at Texas Tech, he has been placed on suspension. Suspended after a racially insensitive comment made around a Bible verse involving slavery and slave-serving masters. And you asked Djokovic about this earlier. He's inevitably going to be out. But here's another. He's a 66-year-old coach who, I mean, if Chris Beard's already back in the mix, he will be too. And he's already addressed it with the team, and he's still suspended.
Yeah, here's the thing with Mark Adams. In anyone that's going to quote Scripture. It's one thing to quote Scripture, and you can do that, right? I mean, you can do that with your team. I've got no issue with that. I just think it's very odd that you want to quote Scripture about, a slave serving their master when you're the guy's coach. That doesn't seem to be hitting at the right points. And also, to me, it's very, with everything with Christianity, pointing out that verse in a coach-player relationship is incredibly self-serving of Mark Adams.
And he was encouraging players receiving coaching from their coaches.
Just like the Bible said that,
workers and
servants
teachers
submit to their masters or whatever it was. Again, I just think this is a very self-serving thing to say. If you're going to quote Scripture to your players, when you're quoting something about serving me and not service to each other, I got an issue with that. If you're Mark Adams, I get it, is what I'm saying. I don't think this is necessarily right of him in this situation, and maybe that surprises people. But I can understand Texas Tech being upset with this. Now, there's two sides of the story. You got the thing coming out now that a player says he spit on him. And then Mark Adams is saying, I didn't spit on him. I was ill, and I was coughing for a month, and I happened to cough and slobber on him. But then the player said, and he said after he did that I can spit on you whenever I want, by the way. And Mark Adams says, I don't recall saying that. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe it is time, that this maybe ends.
Texas Tech is looking into this.
He's going to get fired. There's no way you recover from this. Here's the bottom line. And this is not always fair, but the moment you're in charge of African-American players and the majority African-American players, and you are a white guy and you are labeled a racist because of something you said to your team, it's over. I don't think you can come back from that. I think it's going to be very hard for Mark Adams to stay employed and be employed and to recruit young black players to come play for him. That's just the bottom line of where we are. I don't see him coming back from this professionally.
Well, I want to learn more details of this, like from the spitting angle of the comment.
Yeah, there's going to be players that defend him. Dan Dockich brought up Pat Chambers at Penn State. There were plenty of African-American players who defended him after the fact. I think you'll get a lot of that with Texas Tech as well. And he's going to go serve as an assistant somewhere. He's a long-time valued assistant. He'll be on someone's staff. The days of him running a Power 5 basketball program are over.